Welcome everybody to the Monday Night Tours. I'm your guy Josh Kaiser, and I am joined today by just Kyle Hoagland. What's going on?
It's the best show on earth when it's just Kyle Hoagland. The guy that won't be named. Hopefully, we'll see him next week. I'm looking forward to it. This is I feel like the war is really starting to pick up. This is now like the second episode where it's head to head. Sort of, as far as television is concerned.
It's kind of head-to-head, but as we get into it, we'll find out. It looks like it wasn't actually head-to-head. There's some... I'm going to go with what Vince said as opposed to what the network actually had listed, but we are discussing the September 18th, 1995 versions of Nitro and Raw. We're going to get right into it. As we alluded to, Haddix is not here this week. He should be back next week. That said, let's get right into Nitro, Kyle. We're live from Johnson City, Tennessee, and I think I think you're going to notice that there's a lot of, I don't know how big Johnson City, Tennessee is, but I feel like these are cities that as the show continues to grow and get popular, this is not, Johnson City, Tennessee will not be housing more Nitros. Is that fair, do you think?
I'm always wondered, how do people actually get booked for this type of stuff? Like, is it a bidding war, or back then did they just say, look, we just need to find? Here's the thing, that company is a Southern company, so I think that maybe they have some people that are, or they have connections with Turner and stuff like that. I'm actually
there's a lot. I'm
actually on the JohnsonCityTennessee.org website, and I'm just trying to see what interesting things that you could do here. And I'll say their website's kind of, I don't know, I guess trippy looking. It looks a little bit outdated, but it's cool enough. Johnson City, Tennessee has a population currently of 65,000. So not a gigantic city.
No, not at all. But I will say, I just had to Google to make sure. Johnson City, Tennessee is in the lyrics of Wagon Wheel, if you remember that. If you're familiar with the song Wagon Wheel.
I mean, I am, but I guess I wasn't paying attention to. There's good old Johnson City.
He's heading out west from the Cumberland Gap to Johnson City, Tennessee, and so on. So there you have it.
Hey, Mama, rock me.
That's right. Probably more time than we need to give Johnson City, but I just thought
absolutely,
it was worth it. Again, I just want to make a note here. The show opens up here, Nitro. There's fire. There's pyro. It really kind of feels like a rock concert, a really big show, and to me, it's a much stronger opening than Raw, a much more bam, here we are kind of opening than Raw has. So
it was much more exploding. Yeah, right. There's definitely something that was going to catch your eye if you were just starting to watch. Sure.
Absolutely. Again, we start out with the announcing crew. It's the same three-man team we've been used to on these Nitros. And I got to admit, Pepe shows up here at the beginning. So it's good to see Pepe here. He is wearing the cowboy hat and stuff like that. So there he is. I don't know. Pepe watch continues because that's kind of been my thing at this point.
Well, maybe they didn't have a contract for him last week, and they can only use him for a couple of minutes because his agent told him, hey, if you're not going to sign my client, then you're going to get him for about 2 minutes. So it looks like the contract has been signed, and Pepe's here a long time.
That is a relief for everyone, I'm sure. So getting into the show itself, it opens up. We got a Mean Gene, of course, backstage, and an ambulance is backing up of all things. So Mean Gene right on the thick of it, right there in the heat, as good a reporter as you can get, right there where the action's at. And out comes the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan and the Giant, and they kind of cut a little promo here about how the Giant. I guess we can just talk about it right now. Fall Brawl happened the night before, of course, and if you didn't get a chance to watch Fall Brawl, of course the ending was the Dungeon of Doom versus the Team Hulkamaniacs. The biggest thing is the Giant shows up at the end after the Hulkamaniacs win, and Hogan's got a couple minutes alone in the cage with Sullivan. Giant comes in and kills Hogan, I guess, commits murder. He breaks his neck right then and there. I thought it was a very strange way of kind of attacking somebody because, it is a show, and they basically showed the whole, like you'd see in the movie, snap your neck.
So yeah, only in the professional the professional sport of wrestling, are you allowed to kidnap, commit larceny, rape, murder, attempted murder? And that's all that happens from it usually is a grudge match at the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, that opens up with that. They're talking about that, what the Giant did. And the Giant cuts a pretty good promo here.
I was actually very impressed with the promo.
Yeah, and he's pretty early on in his career at this point. So he does kind of that raspier voice, which I kind of miss, to be honest. Big Show doesn't do that anymore, obviously, but I kind of miss that. And that's it, Kyle. You wanted to make a quick comment here when they make Mean Gene kind of asks him what his father would think about this.
Yeah, and I don't know if this was mentioned previously, because obviously this isn't the debut of the Giant, but he's pretty green still at this point. And
but he's not the Green Giant, just to be clear.
He is not. He's much raspier voice than the Jolly Green Giant, and also more jolly. So I don't know if this was already established that, this is the father of, and I don't know if they ever said like Andre the Giant. I don't know if they'd always just alluded to it by saying, hey, what would your father think, who was also once called the Giant in wrestling,
right?
Like kind of backdoor, kind of saying how it's Andre the Giant's dad. And I didn't know that was part of the shtick. I don't remember that, but
I think it eventually gets kind of dropped. But I think you're right at the beginning. They want to kind of play off of that. I think Hogan discovered the Giant and really pushed for him and stuff. And I think Hogan was trying to eventually build to that him and Andre magic of the late 80s. So I think that was kind of what the idea was there. But it's a good point to bring up. That's about it for that promo. Then we got the American males, Scotty Riggs and Marcus Bagwell, going to be wrestling the Blue Bloods, which doesn't happen because as soon as the Blue Bloods are going to come out, they're attacked by the Harlem Heat.
Or at least one of them is. I don't think we ever see Steven Regal.
That's fair. Yeah, Steven Regal's not there, but Bobby Eaton is. And Harlem Heat, of course, had just won the tag titles the night before at Fall Brawl against Dick
Slater and Bunkhouse Buck.
And Bunkhouse Buck. There we go. Yeah. I couldn't think of Bunkhouse Buck's name.
Which, by the way, one of the most prolific tag teams of all time.
They're right up there. It's Midnight Express, New Age Outlaws, Legion of Doom, or Road Warriors, and Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck. I mean, it's got to be. That's your Mount Rushmore of tag teams. So the Harlem Heat decide to come in, interfere, and then they hold their titles up and decide that they're going to put their titles up on the line in this match against the American males. It's kind of a strange thing for a heel group to do, but here we are. So I'm going to break down the match for you. There's not much to say about it. It's a rather short match. They're not displaying too much. Booker T is the obvious star to me out of this group. I think even as young as he is here, and it's long before he, goes into his singles run and eventually, what he does in the WWF. But you could tell he's talented just from right here, that he is probably the most talented in the ring. I do want to note that I saw a big sign. I don't know if you noticed it yet or not, Kyle, but there was a "We Want It Raw" sign in the back.
I did see that.
That is the first and only time you see it, so I have a feeling that somebody caught it on air and security or somebody removed it.
Don't be shocked if that's actually the art for this episode.
Oh, there you have it. So this match, Colonel Parker ends up showing up. Of course, Colonel Parker was Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck's manager, and him and Sherry are like in love with each other, and that was kind of how the match ended the night before. He comes out there, picks Sherry up. Somehow it distracts Booker T, and he gets into a roll-up, kind of a weird ending, and next thing you know, American Males won, and they think they're tag champions. Eric Bischoff has stated a couple of times that he doesn't think it's official because, Commissioner or whatever, Nick Bockwinkel didn't sign on to it, and he's not sure. So I have a feeling these titles are not staying in the American Males' hands for long, whether or not that's from a match that they lose or that they just are not awarded them. I have a feeling they're not going to be awarded them. That's it for me, this match. 1.5 stars. It wasn't much of a match, but it kind of told a little bit of a story, more going further with the Colonel Parker Sherry storyline at this point. Your thoughts, Kyle?
The only thing good that came out of that match was that I think it really put the heel heat back on Harlem Heat. because I think they were going up against the American males. That I think people didn't really care too much about. They weren't really faces either. I think they kind of put them over in a sense to make it seem like, oh, they were just embarrassed. I think that added more like, okay, yeah, Harlem Heat, they are heels. But it's a lame match overall. I give it once again, a 1.5 stars, because I'm not a huge fan of titles changing hands so often. They won the titles just the day before, and it's just like, yeah, if you want to put a 1-up on the champions, sure, but don't put the titles on the line. It just was a really weird kind of. And also, one other thing I just want to quickly say. The ending was just weird because Sherry was supposed to hit Bagwell, and then it didn't happen, but Booker T still went into another move anyways. So it wasn't even like the distraction did anything.
Yes, it seemed like a very strange, I don't know if it was a botched ending or what the case was, but I just wasn't thrilled with it. What's your star rating on this?
As I said, 1.5. I'd say I would have said 2 if it wasn't the fact that I felt like it was bad choreography on the ending.
Right, I agree. Then we go to a Macho Man Slim Jim commercial. Part of the deal I just want to mention here, I don't know if people knew it or not, Macho Man, of course, being the big Slim Jim spokesperson, one of the things he did when he came to WCW and worked with his contract was, hey, I can bring Slim Jim over here with me. Kind of stuck it to Vince in some ways because Slim Jim was going to be a big sponsor for them. And then it also probably helped recoup some of the money that WCW was going to pay Macho Man, so just worth mentioning there. Then we come back from commercial, and we've got what is now becoming a weekly segment. It's Mean Gene in the ring with Ric Flair. Ric Flair comes out, calls out Brian Pillman, who, of course, helped Arn Anderson beat Flair the night before at Fall Brawl. And he tells Brian Pillman he's going to chop him so hard that Boomer Esiason will feel it. Just worth noting that apparently Brian Pillman played for the Cincinnati Bengals. I did not know that. That was a fun fact I learned from Ric Flair. And he actually played. Boomer Esiason played from the Bengals from '84 to '92. Of course, this is happening in 1995. So he gave a shout out to Boomer Esiason instead of Jeff Blake, who was the current quarterback of the Bengals. So just thought Blake maybe needs a little shout out here since Flair didn't give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is I knew Brian Pillman was a football player more than I ever heard of a guy named Jeff Blake.
Fair enough. So that's about it there. Typical Flair promo at this point. Then we got a WCW Saturday Night promo, which still at the time, Saturday Night's kind of like their main program. Nitro's here to start to go head to head with Raw, but it's not the prime show at this point. It's still Saturday Night. And that's why you'll see matches like Sting versus Lord Regal. We got Cobra versus Craig Pittman, which is supposed to be a rematch from the night before at Fall Brawl. And you'll get an update on Hulk Hogan, when his funeral arrangements are, because, the Giant snapped his neck. And Dusty Rhodes will get an interview. So that's the first time we've heard Dusty's name in our short time of, reviewing these episodes.
I was just glad that we know that Lord Steven Regal is not murdered, because he was not there, or at least or maybe he was beaten in the back by Harlem Heat. But we know that he's good to go and he's ready to fight on Saturday.
There you go. After that, we've got Mr. Wonderful versus Johnny B. Bad. Kyle, before I have you break this down, I want to make a couple quick mentions. For those of you who watched the Fall Brawl, you'll know Mr. Wonderful had a backstage promo where he was basically feeling like he wasn't Mr. Wonderful anymore, and he was really, really kind of torn up. And Gary Spivey, who I had no idea who it was, I had to look up all about Gary Spivey. He's like some sort of motivational guy who wears this weird frizzy silver afro, and he's like a white dude. It's kind of strange. But he talks to Mr. Wonderful, tells him he's Mr. Wonderful, and now Mr. Wonderful has found his mojo yet again. He comes out to new ring attire. He doesn't even want to be called Paul Orndorff anymore. He's got this opera music and a new persona. And he's wrestling Johnny B. Bad. Of course, Johnny B. Bad had just won a long opening match at Fall Brawl with Brian Pillman. They went past the standard time, went into an overtime thing. It was, great match. Brian, and because he won it, he is now the number one U.S. contender, number one contender for the U.S. title here. So good for him. It's, riding some momentum as he comes into this match. It's funny to me. Johnny B. Bad comes out and he throws a frisbee into the crowd. I just want to note, at Fall Brawl the night before, he went to throw it into the crowd, and he threw it right into the ring post, and it fell into the ring. It was like typical WCW. I think there's some GIFs of it out there, so if you want to take a look at it. That's it, Kyle. I'll let you break this match down.
So as far as, first of all, that theme music, my God, I completely apologize to the WWF for me judging their theme music, especially DDS and his drill.
Yeah,
I would have taken the drill.
You just judged it last week.
Yeah, I'll take the drill over whatever that was. The only thing that is worth having is an alarm clock to piss off your wife. Like, that was just so bad that it took a 180 and became good again. So the match overall is not really much to talk about. There were some decent moments. There was a point where Mr. Wonderful and Super Mullet Man Nick Patrick kind of go nose to nose, like as if Nick Patrick's not going to take guff from Mr. Wonderful, which I thought was a pretty funny one. The match, I think, actually happens for about 45-50 seconds, and then they go to a commercial. So the match didn't really happen or go on too long. You come back. And then Mongo says something along the lines of there's more action here than a rooster sees in a hen house. And I actually paused the playing of that, and I gave it a slow clap. So well done, Mongo.
It's funny is I read your notes for this match, and I have literally the identical notes. I think we both
we're both identical fans. I feel like I think you and I look for the same stuff.
Yeah, it was basically, I said the same thing about, Orndorff and Nick Patrick getting nose to nose. And then I talked about the Roosters hen house thing. And it's funny that we picked out the same things about these matches.
And so there's a couple really strange things that happened on here. One of them, which is I think Johnny B. Bad hit a couple of weird kicks that did not hit really at all. And
one of them was on the outside. Yeah,
that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like he hit him and he just and nothing really happened. He just kind of kicked, and then it's like a real weird. I don't know. It was just really bad.
He missed it completely. Yeah.
And then right after that, Johnny Bad does a nice little plancha that made it look kind of good because it was a good 3 minutes of just awkward wrestling. And then the most weird thing about the whole match was Orndorff won.
Yeah,
legit
did not
won.
See it coming.
No, I didn't. The only thing I can think of is that because they had that long match with Pillman, Johnny B. Bad did. Maybe they want to play off the whole obviously he's tired, he didn't get. But there was nothing about this match that would have given Paul Orndorff anything. It just makes Johnny B. Bad look bad.
Well, and if the announcers or something would have sold it more like, he's probably exhausted from that match yesterday.
Yeah, they didn't help him out. They didn't help out Johnny B. Bad at all on that. Yeah. But it's like he's the number one contender for the second biggest title in the company, and you just jobbed to a 40-year-old man. Guy is way out of his prime, and that win's not going to – I mean, I understand Paul Orndorff – this is the new Paul Orndorff. So what do? Do you give the guy who's on the roll, or do you give it to the guy who's trying to rebrand himself rebrand back to his old brand? It was just weird.
Yeah.
Bad booking. It's bad booking.
Bad booking all around. I agree completely.
As far as stars, this is another – 1.5. I would have given it a 2, maybe. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give this I'll keep the 1.5, and I don't even think Johnny B. Bad winning would have given it a 2. So
no, I agree. I think I'm more on the 1.25 kind of end of things. I mean, I did not like the match at all. I thought it was sloppy. I thought the booking decision was a head scratcher. I agree. It was dumb. Poor job on them. So we'll still have to see what happens with Johnny B. Bad going forward with his U.S. title shot. After this, we get a Baywatch crossover promo. Macho Man was doing some bench presses in the, on the beach with a bunch
as you normally would do.
Yeah,
it's a normal thing. Yeah,
as a bunch of the Baywatch babes are watching him, and then of course the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan comes out of nowhere, chokes him with the barbells, and attacks him. And then, of course, who would come to Savage's aid to break up this nasty heel? But Ric Flair. So apparently, Ric Flair now, he's helping Savage. Is he a heel? Is he a face? I cannot. The way they've booked Flair since we started watching has been all over the place. He was booked a heel against Arn, but then they started talking like he was not a heel against Arn. And he talked up the
Flair's
total
always been like that, though. he's always been like a heel, but not like evil. He's always just been like, people hate me because I'm awesome and like I'm, styling and profiling, kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing. So it was kind of seems like he's an awesome like character, but he cheats a lot. So it's always kind of a weird. He teeters that line a lot. Yeah.
So very strange to me. After that, we actually get Mean Gene back in the ring. To discuss a little in-ring interview with the Macho Man, the recently attacked Macho Man. I just got to say, Macho Man saying, "See ya, wouldn't want to be ya," was just classic, because that's just one of those things from the 90s I have not heard.
Yeah, that's so 90s.
So long, so I appreciated that.
That's something Todd Pettengill would say.
Right, oh yeah, absolutely. And then he talks about how everyone's watching Nitro live through their video scopes. Again, I don't know what Macho says half the time, but I love it. And then he calls Luger out for a cheap shot at Fall Brawl. Now, it's kind of funny to me because the past Nitro, they had this thing, is Luger going to join the team? Savage didn't trust him, the whole thing. But then at Fall Brawl, they cut a promo before the match, and Savage is like, "It's all forgiven, brother. Like, we're all on the same page. I know the total package is here. We're all together." So it's like, oh, okay, they must have just scrapped that idea. Then they do the cheap shot in the match, and it's like, okay, I thought we just scrapped the thing. And then here he is calling him out again. So I don't know if they even know where they're going with this Luger storyline right now.
Hey, it's all about false sense of security. Everyone's gung ho, good to go. Everyone thinks it's gonna be great, and then you go into the actual match and you're like, oh, there's some chippy moments. So like maybe it's supposed to kind of give a little bit of question, but yeah, it's still I still think that the writing for WCW is lacking a bit.
Right, but that's okay. Mean Gene says it. He didn't mean anything by it. Mean Gene, ever the investigative reporter, he's all over it. He was asking people backstage. They said no. Luger, everybody, Jimmy Hart, Sting, Luger, they're not part of the Dungeon of Doom, so you can trust Gene on this one. He's done his homework. Then a Luger comes out in what is apparently now his ring attire of black jeans and a white blouse, which he wore in his debut. Calls Savage jealous because he's got this world title match. And then they're getting ready. Are they going to have a match? But Mean Gene puts the kibosh on that and says absolutely not. So
because he's
match.
A booker.
That's right. Gene does whatever Gene wants. So no match yet, but it looks like they're teasing for maybe something in the future here between Savage and Luger. And after that, we got a Fall Brawl recap.
Fall Brawl.
And this is, of course, where the Giant kills. They show the live murder of Hulk Hogan, where he snaps his neck. That's about it. And then he also destroyed his monster truck destroyed Hogan's motorcycle. So you got that. And then we go to the show's main event, Brian Pillman versus Ric Flair. And
which hold on. We got to ring the bell here. We have a dead guy. So we're now three episodes in.
Oh,
still have a dead guy.
I thought we were talking about Hulk Hogan again. I'm like, no, he's alive. He was just dead in kayfabe. So I don't know about you. There wasn't a whole lot for me to say about this match. Boomer Esiason felt some chops because Flair gave it to Pillman. For me, the biggest surprise was Flair hooks on the figure four, and it's almost an instant tap. And I don't know if I've ever seen that. Normally, it's you hold the figure four for a while, you reverse it, and then eventually it gets broken. Flair doesn't even win by the figure four a whole lot, I feel like. And here he does here in record time. And then, Flair calls out Arn Anderson again, so it looks like there's more going on with that. Anything you want to add to that match breakdown?
The breakdown itself, no. It was what it was. It's Flair bingo is what I call it. There's woos, there's chops. Flair gets flipped off the top turnbuckle, getting thrown off the ropes, figure four. The only thing I thought that was really weird was that it was a clean win by Flair. That's something you don't really see. Once again, we're kind of hinting that maybe he's going a little bit more face. I don't know, even though he's feuding with Arn Anderson, who is a face. So it's a real weird thing. But the booking, it kind of cancels out the booking because there were so many opportunities for the storyline with Flair and Arn to keep going. Like Arn should have interfered at least, and maybe so. Pillman gets to win by interference or something like that. But I cannot count on my hand how many times. Because it's not that many matches that Flair just wins just straight up with the figure four, especially since he became a heel.
The only thing I'll say from a booking standpoint, Arn won the match the night before. Arn is the face. To me, it wouldn't make sense for Arn to interfere or cost Flair the thing because as far as he's the good guy and he won. So from that aspect, I don't think aren't necessarily needed to.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, Arn doesn't need to prove anything because he has the win over him.
Right. So I'll give him a little slack there. For me, though, it's like a 2-star match, just because they didn't screw anything up. But it wasn't much to write home about.
I mean, this is the main event, so you would hope that this is going to be your best match. And sadly, what you and I are rating this, a 2 is the highest rated match.
It was the best match, but that's not saying a whole lot.
No, it's not. But once again, I think we've come to an agreement that when we rate our matches, a 2 means it's a match that kind of just stayed the course. It did its
job. Yeah. It did its job. They didn't screw anything up, but it wasn't anything to write home about. After that, the show pretty much goes to its ending. Of course, they cut to the announcer's desk, and Pepe's gone. So apparently Pepe has a once-per-show appearance, and normally it's at the end, but this time Pepe came in the beginning. He wanted to get the hell out of there. He didn't like the card or something. So
Pepe's got like a weak bladder or something.
Yeah. They're teasing next week Disco Inferno making his debut to Nitro, so love to see that. I haven't seen Disco in quite some time, so I'm looking forward to that. And
but they also said that last week too, that he was making his Nitro debut.
This is his Nitro debut. Yeah, he was on Saturday night before. Then it's weird. They kind of show something. All of a sudden, Shivani's not Shivani.
Hey, soon.
At some point.
I'm being so excited.
Bischoff's talking, and Heenan keeps pointing to his headset, like he's hearing something, and he's like, "Something's going on in the back." And then Bischoff's like, yeah, something's going on in the back. And then the show just ends. So it was kind of strange to me. I don't know if they were trying to do something and they ran out of time or what the case was. But
it has to be. I think this is one of those cases where being on live TV kind of bites you, because I think they went long and it seemed like they had more to share at the end of the show, but the show ran too long. And once again, that's why, Raw, when it finally went live, always ran a few minutes past just in case. You never ended right at from 9 to 10. It was always like 10:07, and then of course Silk Stockings. Everybody waited to make sure they could watch that.
No doubt.
But the other, I always want to say one more thing about the overall thing about this Nitro.
Yeah, give us your final thoughts on it.
So the finishes were surprising. I think this is what this was. I think this particular episode was supposed to give you the idea of, anything can happen live. Never expect the expect the unexpected. But it was almost too much. Like, I understand the idea of anything can happen, but Orndorff winning, Flair winning clean, it was just like almost like surprise to a fault. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, because the matches were okay, but like, to me, like, I maybe it's supposed to be good that, like, oh wow, yeah, American males won the titles, but it's just like all 3 matches had an aspect of like, that was kind of a weird way to end it, or at least not what I would have expected for a storyline to continue. And I think that kind of just shows I think there are still some holes in the writing that need to be patched.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and still learning some of the nuances when it comes to running a live show versus a taped show. Won't really need to add anything back other than you added. I mean, pretty much for me, it's some strange booking choices, especially with Johnny B. Bad. And the matches to me were not that good. So overall, probably my least favorite Nitro yet. If we're rating the Nitros we've watched, this is by far, I think, the worst. But that's about all I've got to add to that.
Well, I mean, that also is going to make a whole lot of sense, because remember, I was commending Nitro with how they would have their big stars being on the shows. And now we're talking, we're out of Fall Brawl, and now we have matches with people that, like, I have no real investment into. Like, we had the tag titles that took place and were defended, unsuccessfully. But other than that, the other matches were like, yeah, you had Flair and Pillman, but like it really ultimately, like, you don't have Sting, you don't have Hogan, because apparently Hogan's dead for a little while. Luger shows up in his blouse. Macho Man has a quick little whatever with Mean Gene. Overall, though, like, for the actual matches, like, there wasn't really much to promote to people if they could. I
agree. Unlike this Raw we're about to discuss now, which had a lot to promote because they had an In Your House coming up, which was actually, believe will be this Sunday following this episode. And they opened the show up by recapping the interference during the Razor Ramon British Bulldog match last week. Of course, the 1-2-3 Kid challenged Razor to a match this week. And then we get right into the show. And this is where Vince says, welcome to a special Thursday night edition of Raw. So this is where, again, it doesn't look like, I guess they're going head-to-head. Raw got preempted for some reason, it looks like. They keep saying it's Thursday edition. They reiterated a few times during the show. On the network, it's listed that it happened on September 18th, but maybe it didn't. Maybe it was actually
that might just be laziness from the WWE network. They probably just like every Monday they probably just put the date down.
I think that's exactly what happened. So we'll get they then show we get into this Razor Ramon match. Keeping in mind, of course, 1-2-3 Kid got his fame really from beating Razor Ramon almost 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago.
I feel like they're milking that. When you said 2 years ago, I was kind of surprised. Like, wow, they've been kind of milking that whole thing for 2 years.
Yeah. And just before the match starts, of course, they recap one more time Dean Douglas and Razor brawling at after Razor's SummerSlam match. So, of course, there's that Dean Douglas Razor feud that's kind of looming in the back as well. And Kyle, since Razor is your guy, what were your thoughts on this match?
First of all, I thought they were going to headline the night. I thought that was going to be the main event. Nice little grudge match, two of the kind of the bigger draws in the company. I was very surprised to see that this was the first match.
Yeah, it was set up from the week before. It seemed like it was going to be the main event for sure.
Right. So, I mean, as far as the match, once again, people don't understand the clique dynamic. I mean, these two guys are very good friends in real life. They still are to this day. They want to make sure that they're both going to look good in the match, because I'm sure they're back there discussing what they want to do and everything. So, everybody, I think they all do their spots. 1-2-3 Kid does a lot of his judo kicks and things like that at the beginning. He's, Razor doesn't even take off his outfit yet, and he's just getting kicked a bunch. Which is, like I said, classic 1-2-3 Kid, classic Sean Waltman type of offense. One thing I thought was very interesting, like probably maybe a minute into the match, Razor already does like his fall away slam from the second rope, which is usually the precursor to his finisher, the Razor's Edge. So I was like, wow, that's real early in the match. And it also really reminded me how good of a seller Waltman is. 1-2-3 Kid. I mean, I feel like a lot of the smaller people, when they get thrown around a lot, that's when you're nimble like that, you just have that kind of more innate ability to be able to sell things. Just because you're a little bit more flexible, you kind of got a little bit more of like a feistiness to you. It's hard to have someone who's large sell a lot of things. Now we finally get the anything can happen in the WWF, which is basically WCW, like one of their catchphrases. And I think it's something that you say when you have a real competitor with your own show. If you're all you have, you don't need to say that. Anything can happen in the WWF, because that's just something that you say saying, you don't need to watch this other show because our show is even more unpredictable type of thing. So there was one point in this match that I almost lost it. It was when 1-2-3 Kid put a sleeper, and Vince was losing his mind, thinking like, oh my God, this looks like he made it sound like this was going to be like the end of the match type of thing. And while it looks like he's like, oh, is he going to tap? Is he going to pass out? We'll be right back. And then we go to a fucking commercial. And then we come back, he's still in the sleeper.
It's funny is, so you noted that, and I've got my notes here. And when we do these notes for the matches, I write usually big spots, anything noteworthy commentary or something noteworthy in the match, anything that really sticks out. But if it's just like a standard match, I typically don't write too much. I have rest hold through commercial, ? Because that was so bizarre to me.
I feel like putting a sleeper, I don't care who you are, if you have a sleeper on someone for 5 minutes, you're done. You're not waking up from a sleeper for 5 minutes. But Razor does, and I think at some point he, once again, second week in a row, the official gets knocked out, and like a trained dog, Dean Douglas comes out in his dad jeans, splashes on Razor Ramon, and that was enough for 1-2-3 Kid to kind of crawl over and get the 1-2-3 Kid 1-2-3.
Nice.
Yep.
So what was your match rating on that one?
I actually really liked it. I give this probably the 2.5, close to 3 star. It's about as good as a match for just being a grudge match. It's a classic ending for a match that pushes the feud between Razor and Dean. They're continuing on that storyline, obviously. Dean gets another one up on Razor, which I think everybody is kind of thinking that Razor would easily beat Dean Douglas, and they're just really making Dean look really good. And it puts the face in a compromised situation with the pay-per-view coming up. So there was also much needed heat. There's much needed heat for those two for that match, and it also continues the angle about 1-2-3 Kid and Razor, because obviously there's still something still going on with that. So I think it really did kind of hit all the angles of what was going on with it. And obviously, like I said before, it's going to be a decent quality match because they're real life buddies. They want to make sure that they're both getting over.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you have to say. What you had to say, I think about 2.5, maybe 2 3/4 kind of match. Solid. Could have been better. Could have been a lot worse. The only thing I wanted to add to it is King, of course, being typical King, makes some comment, and I don't have the exact thing, but he keeps talking about Hurricane Marilyn, and he makes a comment a couple of times about Hurricane Marilyn these people were getting wrecked like Hurricane Marilyn wrecked the Caribbean and stuff like that. And I had to look up, Hurricane Marilyn killed 13 people directly. This was literally probably a week prior to this this show, so it's very new in people's lives. Could you imagine this, like, this week, if Corey Graves or somebody made a comment, like, about how Hurricane Harvey or Hurricane Irma wrecked Texas, just like Braun Strowman wrecked, somebody.
Comparing it to, like, oh, look at that choke slam. That's just like this hurricane that destroyed people's families.
Right.
Yeah, that's, and maybe it's more acceptable because A, no internet, B, Raw's not a like a worldwide phenomenon
it's not
show.
Nationally traded now.
Yeah,
it's a much different
no one's
thing.
Gonna ask.
But I just thought it was interesting. I just had to make a note of that.
Yeah, different times, man. Those were good times back when you could joke about hurricanes.
Yeah, no kidding. After this, of course, we get the Dean Douglas report card segment. He gives 1-2-3 Kid a D for being dumb. He gives Razor an E for trying to elevate himself by trying to get himself involved with Dean Douglas. He gives himself an A, just because he's the Dean. And then
obviously.
And then N was a no-brainer, and I didn't write down what was a no-brainer. Maybe that he's the best or something. I'm just going to assume.
I think they were saying what's going to happen at their match between him and Razor.
And, of course, those D-E-A-N spells Dean. That's the big reveal at the end of that segment. So, Dean Douglas, there you have it. That's the highlight of Dean's time. And after that, we come back and we've got a match with the Native American Tatanka, with Kama going against Sparkplug, Bob Holly, and Savio Vega. And I wanted to break this one down. Believe it or not, I think this was my favorite match of both shows. And it's not the, other than Kama, and I guess Savio Vega is probably underrated here, but it's not like the best of the best by any means. But I thought it was a good match from the psychology and ring in a storytelling aspect.
Well, also with the commentating together, I think the commentating and the match all meshed real well.
Absolutely, and that's what I was going to say is the commentary, which again helps that Vince is part of this commentary team. He knows what the story is, where on Nitro, a lot of the times the announcing teams were not even told who was going to win matches because they wanted a realistic response. Well, that's fine, but you just can't tell the story all the time then of what it is here. Where in this case, they basically say, you've got Tatanka and Kama, who are part of Ted DiBiase's stable. So they work, they've tagged together. They keep talking about these guys have experience working with each other. And then you've got Bob Holly and Savio Vega teaming for the first time together. So they're just kind of two guys thrown together. And then the other thing is they keep talking about how Bob Holly is a hothead. And what happens is Bob Holly keeps trying to, get into the ring, get involved. And the ref goes to hold him out, tell him to go back to his side, get back out on the apron. And meanwhile, Kama and Tatanka start double teaming on Savio Vega. And this happens a lot through the match, and they keep stressing it. And I just thought, it was good from a story, especially for something random with these four people on a, the middle of Raw. I thought it was a really well.
It was also a very non-consequential match.
Yeah, I mean, the ending. Yeah, other than all it did is it showed Tatanka and Kama under DiBiase work better. They're a more well-oiled machine, and they won the match. The only other thing I got to add is King made a lot of car puns because Bob Holly, he talked about Bob Holly doesn't like backstreet drivers, and And I think he made a comment about Jeffrey Dahmer after the match about Jeffrey Dahmer's brains being eaten for breakfast. Again, another of those jokes that just seems like it wouldn't happen in today's WWE. But for me,
absolutely not.
For me, it's a 3-star rating, and I think it's one of those. If you want to see, if you were like training to be a wrestler and you want to know like what makes a good story, a good ring story, this is the kind of match I would show him. I thought it told a good story, and at the end of the day, they're probably Tatanka and Kama aren't going to be the number one contenders or anything like that. But I thought it was a good match. How about you?
So I can't give it a 3. I think the best this match could have ever been was a 3, and I might have would have given that to them if it wasn't for the fact that I feel like it really didn't. We're not talking about 4 guys who actually are very good in the ring right now, especially Kama. Kama's kind of green. You can kind of tell he's kind of new. He's young. The ending gets kind of botched at the end, where I think he was supposed to catch the crossbody and turn it into a power slam, but instead he kind of lost his footing, and it was kind of a rough landing for Bob Holly. Like, he kind of got dropped on his head, which, I mean, I guess complained to the fact that, like, okay, now he can pin him, but it didn't look great. It didn't really like make you impressed with Kama. But yes, I do agree that the psychology of it and everything else, this is definitely something that, like, a textbook match to show somebody. I think this could have been a 3 if the ending was choreographed correctly. Therefore, and it's weird to say, 2.5 stars or 2.5 match for these 4 guys. That's honestly very impressive.
Yeah, that's not. I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said there. After that, we got a Razor Ramon promo where he makes a bunch of puns about school because, of course, Dean Douglas is a dean. Anything you want to talk about here? For me, it's classic Razor. And, even when Scott Hall became Scott Hall in WCW, he was not Razor Ramon. And I do kind of miss the classic Razor Ramon promos.
With his little accent, little made-up accent?
Yeah.
So the only thing I say is that if you actually watched last week, he does also a promo in the ring with the 1 2 3 Kid where he talks about Dean for a little bit, says the exact same things. Says, like, calls him a bookworm. And he says, like, oh, you're going to take Razor to school. Like, he basically just said the same
just reiterates
4 sentences, reiterated in a promo. So not an impressive promo, but I mean, I love Razor Ramon, so I mean, there's my rose-tinted glasses.
It's possible that he just repeated that promo because last week you had Lawler talking over it the entire time.
That's true. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It didn't get anywhere. So, like, we're just going to run that again, and Lawler, you're going to shut the fuck up this time. So, after that, we got a WrestleMania 11 special promo. It's something they're going to run on NBC or something like that to just talk about WrestleMania 11. Nothing to mention there. And then we've got Jean.
I think they were actually playing it. I think they were actually putting it on NBC. Like, you could watch it, I thought.
I don't think it's actually WrestleMania 11 they're putting on there. I think it was a promo to discuss and kind of talk about it. But maybe you're right. I'm not sure. Apparently they didn't do a good job of talking about what exactly it was, if we have differing thoughts on it. But then we got the Jean-Pierre Lafitte match against Brian Walsh. And Kyle, since you're the biggest Brian Walsh mark I know, why don't you go ahead and tell me what you thought about this match?
I am currently creating the draft for the Brian Walsh Wikipedia page because, yes, it is possible for someone to not have a Wikipedia page. How does Brian Walsh... All right, I know why Brian Walsh doesn't have a Wikipedia page, but still, there are other people that I've heard of less that have a Wikipedia page that are wrestlers. So I felt bad for Brian Walsh. So... first of all, he's not going to win. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page. He doesn't even have color on his trunks. He just looks like he's wrestling in tighty whities.
But he has 2 eyes, which is more than Jean-Pierre can say.
Right. He does have double of some sort of attribute. So that was actually the thing I was actually impressed with was Brian Walsh is actually getting the upper hand in a decent part of this match. Like, this was not a squash match. Obviously, I think we all knew Jean-Pierre Lafitte was going to win. So I don't know what the point of making Brian doesn't even have a wiki page Walsh in any way, shape, or form. Like, Sky Too High didn't even have any kind of offense against when he fought Isaac Yankup at all. He basically got his ass kicked. So but you know who's going to win. Ultimately, you know who's going to win. It is Jean-Pierre Lafitte. They actually have Hart, quote unquote, on the phone, which I don't think they actually had him on the phone.
Well,
I'm pretty sure this was recorded in the back.
Are you calling shenanigans on this live phone call from Bret Hart on the set of Lonesome Dove?
Yeah, it's on the it's about as legit as Lawler and Vince being at ringside for so. He's talking about how Pierre. One of Pierre's things is that he steals stuff from the ring.
Well, he's a pirate, man. He just takes things.
He's playing his character well. He stole some kid's Bret Hart sunglasses, which I think kind of started this whole thing. What a
heel move right there, taking the sunglasses off of a fan in the front row.
And then Bret Hart's on the phone talking about how Jean stole my jacket, which my mom got me. I'm like, no, your mom did not give you your Hitman jacket. That was custom made by somebody, but I'm pretty sure your mother did not go to the store to find you a Hitman Bret Hart jacket. Also, I just love that
you don't know Helen Hart. She might have a good taste in jackets. You never know if she didn't pick that one out for the Hitman.
And then she sewed it herself with all the patches. It was also cool to know that even now, it's 1995, Lawler still hates the hell out of Hart. So that's still a thing, apparently.
Oh, yeah. Well, they just had the SummerSlam match with Isaac Yankem, who's Lawler's dentist, and he brought him in to take out Hart. So. Oh, yeah, that's true. I completely forgot about that, too. Yep. So one thing I also wanted to mention was this match went on way too long, and I think the only reason why is because they had to make sure get the time in for Hart. Yep, right.
Yeah. And then, I think he did a senton or a swanton for the kids nowadays off the top rope. And I think they call it the cannonball.
Gotta say, I absolutely loved that finisher. I thought it was very good. I thought he did a great job with it because he jumps kind of to the middle of the ring. And, it's he does kind of go into a cannonball form when he hits that senton. I thought it was a great finisher for a pirate.
Yeah, you are so far. You love Jean-Pierre at this point, right now. Is this right now your favorite character you've seen so far, as from a character's standpoint?
As far as characters go, yes. I mean, I think that'll change once Taker and Goldust, one of them shows up. But Jean-Pierre, quite the character.
Especially during a time now where I think it's slowly being phased out, where they're going to do characters like this, where you have the dumpster Drosy and a crazy dentist and things like that, a pirate. I think that we're kind of reaching the twilight of that era. So I guess enjoy it while it lasts, because I think it's not going to happen much longer. As far as the match is concerned itself, the Bret Hart being on the phone was kind of a distraction to actually probably seeing how the match would actually be. I think it's a 2-star.
Jean-Pierre versus Brian Walsh, where you really needed to be that focused on what's happening in the ring.
Yeah, but still, sadly, I would give this match a 2, which is still better than some of the ratings from the Raw match, from the Nitro matches, mainly because it did what it was supposed to do, which was ultimately make Walsh look decent. And then Jean-Pierre Lafitte ultimately won, had some pretty decent athletic spots, including his finisher. And so, it's, once again, no one really screwed up on their spots, and there was enough with the whole Bret Hart thing that it kind of kept the story going. And if the match wasn't 100% interesting, you were listening to the interview with Bret Hart, so it kind of helped out, because I don't think anybody was there to see if Brian Walsh will pull off the upset. So 2-star overall for the production of the interview and the match.
Yeah, agree completely with you on that one. Nothing more to add other than Jean-Pierre actually can only see out of one eye, so it makes sense they put an eye patch on him.
Yeah, so it's a legit thing, guys. He got shot in the face with a pellet gun when he was a little kid. So that is a legitimate. He has one eye he can see out of.
There you go. Then finally, we go to our main event: Men on a Mission versus Yokozuna and Owen Hart. Of course, Yoko and Owen are the tag team champions right now, and they're going to be putting those titles on the line this Sunday at In Your House in that triple header.
Before you move forward with that, 2 things I wanted to say. First of all, you forgot about the promo where they showed that, or they did a thing at the where the crew is reinforcing the ring because there's a bunch of fat people.
I was gonna mention.
Oh, you were gonna say. I'm sorry.
But that's okay.
And then,
yeah, they do show that they were reinforcing the ring post because Yoko and King Mabel, of course, weigh about 600 pounds apiece, and they need to, keep that ring from falling apart.
And one thing I thought was interesting: this is a non-title match, because they even mentioned like, we're so close to the main event. They're like they wanted to make sure that everything was still booked the way it was.
You don't want
right. Last week we had Shawn Michaels putting up the Intercontinental title.
That's a great point.
That was fine.
That's a fantastic point. I didn't even think about that. You're right. But we're within days now because it's the Thursday edition, so really hard to change on the dime like that. So
I suppose.
For me, there's not much to discuss in this match. They tease, of course, King Mabel and Yokozuna, two fat guys about to wrestle. They don't obviously start the match out. A couple times throughout the match, they're almost going to fight, but they don't. Crowd's starting to get into it. And then finally they both get the hot tag, and that leads to a very quick off-the-rope clothesline from Mabel. They both fall down. The ring kind of shakes a bit. I thought, for me, I thought they could have teased that fall down for the two of them. They should have kind of had them knock and fall back a little bit more from a psychology standpoint.
Would have them teeter a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. And then finally, both fall. I think the crowd could have eaten that up if they really just kind of kept just teasing it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. But they didn't. Eventually, Owen kind of does a drop toe hold, and Yoko does a leg drop on top of, it was Mo, I believe. And then Yoko kind of...
it's Sir Mo.
Sir Mo, okay. My apologies. Yeah. And then Yoko kind of weirdly trips up Mabel, so Mabel can't break up the tag. It was kind of a sloppy ending. For me, this is like a 1.5 stars. And I say that because I think they could have teased the big man a little bit more. And on top of it, I don't think it did anything. Because they did, for me, they should have had Diesel and Shawn come out. Something. There should have been more there between the two of them. Or the four of them to lead up for this In Your House. They didn't do it. It dropped the ball for me.
Yeah, to me, it's a 1.5, mainly because it would be a 2-star if this match had any type of storytelling. And like you said, Shawn and Diesel don't come out. They're both heels. The main event is two heels going at it, where it's non-consequential. It's not for a title. That's not for a title match or for the tag straps. So the only thing that you really had going on was when you had two 600-pounders. That was the draw for the main event. And yeah, they did a good job with that. Some of the spots were good. I noticed that there were a couple of shots off the top. I think there was one superplex, and the ring gave no give. Like I keep forgetting how back in the day
they reinforced it, dude.
Oh yeah, good call. The WW, or that's what they showed they were doing. But the one thing I've noticed is that the WCW ring seems to be a little bit more springy, and the WWE ring just literally looks like they're landing on hardwood flooring.
Right.
It looks totally uncomfortable. But yeah, I won't go say anything more because I'm sure we're going to talk more about afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll give it the 1.5, but for kind of a different reason than you. It's two heels fighting, nothing really that was worth it, and no story was being told for a main event.
Okay. And then after that, we come back and we've got Diesel and Shawn. They cut a quick promo. It's very similar to last week. Diesel does speak a little bit longer, and I think he talks about something about calling up Ace because they're going to be coming home with all the hardware, something to that effect. So again, he got a little pun in about them, being the dudes, all with what was the chaps with all the straps?
Two dudes with attitudes, and then they're going to be the two chaps with all the straps.
So that's what they cut. And then we got a Jim Cornette promo. And for me, Cornette finally sells the In Your House main event because Cornette's good at that. He's a booker and he's a great manager. And he says they're actually going to be two fellas who are yella. So that's his big comeback. Again, this is one of those segments where Lawler just will not shut up and continues to talk over him. I don't know when they finally catch on and realize that's totally irritating, but I hope it's sooner than later.
Especially because that was probably the best work on the mic I've seen yet on either Nitro or Raw was Cornette.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's very, very good. And one thing I want to mention, the promo with Shawn and Diesel, did you notice that they're in their wrestling gear? And like Shawn has like the Triple H syndrome where he's wet just everywhere. Like he just got done, like he just got out of a sauna or something, or just got done like wrestling 8 dudes at once. I always found that very strange. Like they didn't have any match or whatsoever. Like you would think they would just be in street clothes, just being like, hey, we're just hanging out in the back, having a good time. But no, they're in their tights, or they're in their actual ring attire to wrestle nobody. And I just find that always just a funny thing that wrestling does sometimes.
Oh, yeah. And then I just want to add one more thing about Cornette's promo. He does, of course, add the uncertainty at the end, talking about how Shawn and Diesel had broken up previously. So it's kind of to plant that uncertainty, like maybe those two will not get along, where meanwhile Owen and Yoko, they're a well-oiled tag team. So that's kind of it. That's your build-up. And then you end the show with Vince and King sitting there, and King makes his big pick where he picks who's going to win the main event at In Your House this Sunday. And he says that the WWF title is going to go to Yokozuna as he pins Diesel. The only thing to worth note here is when they open up the In Your House, which I watched, he actually picks Yoko to win the Intercontinental title then. So he's all over the place, just picking all kinds of things. And then they tease that Bulldog and Undertaker will be on next week's Raw. So we'll finally see Undertaker during our stint of reviewing these Raws. Final thoughts for me. I thought it was could have been better for a go home show to In Your House. It did have the better matches than Nitro, so for that I'll give it okay. And I think Cornette, if it wasn't for the Cornette sell, I would have almost no interest in this main event at In Your House. Kyle, what was your final thoughts on this show?
I think overall it was just kind of a meh. I agree that the matches in general. I still think overall, I think the storytelling is much better on Raw than Nitro. I think that's 3 weeks in a row. I think the storylines, the storytelling is a little bit better. The main event was actually not half bad, though not much to make of it, because you still want some sort of ramifications for a main event. And that's why I think you and I both agree that it would have been nice to have, like, at the very least, maybe Shawn and Diesel being at the rampway, maybe
something,
just taunting or something, just to be there, and like just nothing. Really, there was
especially
nothing much to it.
Especially because the titles weren't on the line. They could have came out there or something and caused them to lose the match. Enough to be like, oh, now we're really angry at you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the only thing we got out of that whole show was that Men on a Mission might be slowly eroding. We think that this might be, towards the end of it, where Mabel goes on his kind of singles run without Sir Mo. And then once again, Click taking a lot of the TV time as per usual. Like, all four guys are on the show again.
That's pretty much the standard at this point.
And the most important thing, somebody please make Brian Walsh a wiki page. I'm sure he would appreciate it.
There you go, fans. If you're out there, give Brian Walsh a wiki page. Who won this week for you, Kyle? Was this Nitro or was this Raw?
It's easily Raw this time. And
I agree.
Yeah, for sure. It's you at least had all the kind of the important people on the show. You had, I think, 2 of the 4 Click members in a match against each other.
Built some of the stories as best you can. You kind of knew what's going on in this pay-per-view. To a degree, you had Hart and Jean-Pierre. There's a little bit going on there. Of course, the Dean Douglas Razor setup. The main event was talked about a little bit. Could have been done a little bit more, but they at least had promos cut about it. So,
and there's something to be said about a Tatanka Kama Sparkplug Holly Savio Vega match. That when you say that was the better match of both shows, that's either a tip of the cap to good in-ring psychology by those 4 guys, or it's just, man, when is either company going to pick up the pace a little bit with the match? Although I'll say the second best match was probably Kid and Razor, once again, mainly because of storytelling.
Right. And I think some of that, I think this is the first time where you see where live TV versus post-production TV, where there's some advantages to post-production. I think that was seen in the way that these two went head-to-head. Oh, excuse me. That said, Raw went to a 2.7 this week, up from 2.5 from the previous week. And Nitro went down from a 2.4 down to a 1.9. So easily the worst Nitro's done in the 3 weeks. A little bit of concern, but we'll see if they bounce back next week.
Which is very interesting, considering that this was the Nitro after a pay-per-view. After a pay-per-view,
yeah. So maybe people weren't happy about the way their hero Hulk Hogan was killed. They were not watching it. I'm not sure what it was, but hopefully it bounces back, and we will be bouncing back next week as we get ready to discuss the September 25th episodes of Nitro and Raw. We'll have the Raw following the In Your House, see what happened with the triple header match. And we'll also see, if Hulk Hogan's back, if he's alive, if he's, in a neck brace, what the case is there. So go watch that one and look forward to discussing next week. And always, follow us on iTunes, subscribe on Google Play, whatever you use there. Leave us a rating. Go find us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Monday Night Tours, or on Twitter's case, Monday Night Tour. We tweet out and things like that, send some pictures to all of those social medias. And you can always go to MondayNightTours.com for all of our social medias, our podcast, whatever you want from there. That's going to be it for me. I'm Josh Kaiser. He is Kyle Hoagland. And we will see you guys next time.
Have a good Tuesday and see ya.